Hello there. Welcome to GitLab Design Talks. I'm here with Hayana. Maybe you can introduce yourself, Hayana.
For sure. I'm Hayana. I'm a designer here at GitLab. I've been working with the release management team for, I don't know, the last 9, 10 months. And recently I shifted to Verify, so Verify testing runner. My experience is really with GitLab is really in the CD, so CI/CD are the product. But prior to GitLab, I have been mostly a UI engineer. So I was that person that designed and built the interface. And here at GitLab, I do a little bit of everything, and it's super exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Let's see what we get from this.
Super. So to start out with, maybe you can sort of talk about your experience with collaboration at GitLab and what that means to you.
Sure. I was actually thinking about this morning, like what's this idea, this sense of collaboration to me, and then I always go back to this idea that everyone can contribute, and I feel like that's a lot of my experience with collaboration at GitLab. Is that as a designer, it's a blessing and a curse that you have access to everything and you can figure out where and how you want to collaborate, but also learn from other people. So I think a lot of my experience with collaboration is really watching what's happening around me and figuring out, how I want to be part of the conversation. It's a little bit of that, but also figuring out on the fly, with the UX team and the UX department changed so much from when I first joined when was that, 2018. And you can really see how, we're getting it's stronger with every iteration of what collaboration is. How do we, what is our role within this company? So yeah, lots of of random thoughts on that.
So you've been here for like a long time in GitLab years, which is really interesting. Yeah. And I'd love to sort of understand a little bit more about how you saw your role change as you've progressed from starting out as being one of the few designers in GitLab to being one of a team of 30 or 40.
Yeah, wow, are we that many? I stopped counting at some point. It's very different in the sense of it was easier to have an overview of what was happening before, right? So for example, if you talk about pajamas, so it was easier to know when a merge request was approved or what kind of like the main topics that we're discussing. Today, you really have to choose your battles. That's how it feels to me, at least. So my role as a designer really evolved around where I wanted to be inserted. So I started working with two-stage groups. Back in the day, I think we were just, my goodness, what were we? I think we were verifying release. Now that broke down into a lot of subgroups and stage groups and direction, etc. So I think the main difference is that now I feel that I'm very focused on, CI/CD and kind of trying to figure out how I want to be part of the bigger conversation. Whereas in the past, I could have a clear or, at least a more granular view of everything that was going on around design at GitLab. But that's a different company. That was 2 years ago. And if you were here before, you know how that changed and you feel the difference. But now, it's so, I don't know, just so important. It's so nice that we have people dedicated to specific product areas, and then you can have, the generalist designers, but still focus on. So the problems are so challenging because this product is too complex. There's no way you can understand everything.
Nice. That's really interesting. And you and I have had some discussions previously around UX strategy. Yeah. And you've got some really interesting perspectives on this. So maybe to start out with, you could tell me about what is UX strategy? Maybe how is it different from something like product strategy?
Yeah, I feel like in my experience, talking about stage group strategy, not necessarily the UX department UX strategy. well, still overlaps, but it's really about the business or strategy, the kind of like the innovation that you want to bring to the product, research, of course, and how you can design that collaboration, you can design that strategy to your stage group or to your counterparts. So yeah, I think most of us are, well, as a company, you're creating something unique here, and you have the ability to define what the strategy is for you and how you want to apply that, and how, yeah, the business, the product, and you as an individual kind of interact with one another. So we had a conversation in that one issue. Maybe I think I have it open here, where I say something like, when my counterparts are not strategic, I cannot be strategic. Remember, that was a very long comment on that. And I think it goes back to what Ian said on his call with you about, having a shared vision and understanding that we are working towards one goal. So a lot of the design strategy that we had in place for the release management team was about understanding what's coming next and why. And linking to what I just said about having a focus on a specific product area, that's really what allows us to kind of look into the hairy problems, and then what are the UX department working on, in a sense of processes, guidelines, what are the tools that the company is putting out there for us, and how we want to apply those into our vision items, but also what our customers are talking about. So a bunch of random words, but I feel like the main topics for me was really like the competitive analysis, talking to our customers, both internal and external. For release, we did a lot of dogfooding. So the delivery team was one of our main internal customers. So they were pretty much, there when we needed them, but also, just when we wanted to validate our assumptions. And yeah, the scorecards, everything between, the drill, all the things that we have in place so far. But most importantly, how do we want to use these tools? So when I talk about the UX strategy, versus the product strategy, it's not just the set of guidelines that the company is putting out there, is documented in the handbook, but how can I use these tools in a way that, it's valuable to my team. And that's what I saw a lot with the release management team. So how can we, for example, use the product development workflow to improve the UX and engineering collaboration? That's also my UX strategy, right? I want to make sure that my developers are not being blocked by design review because they are empowered to make design decisions. So with everything in between, how do we put a process or put like just something in place where they can do that? So how do they understand the problems? And that cascade to, collaboration, making sure that the UX strategy, it's inclusive, that, we think of the bigger ideas together. And we did that through many different ways. For example, think big sessions, async, synchronous reviews, interviewing your own developers as part of the research efforts, because they're also users, right? Or allowing them to shadow some of the interviews. So it's a bunch of things that in the end kind of concentrate to, bringing the business, the UX, and also the people factor to what we call a strategy. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if I can try and summarize that, you have you've taken part in some market-based activities, market research-based activities, some user research-based activities in order to generate like a bit of a landscape of where you could potentially be investing your efforts. And from there, that helps you to determine where is the market going? What are users asking for? And from there, what should we be doing in our build tracks and in our validation tracks in order to achieve the sort of desired outcomes that we're looking for? And then from there, you can deploy like a number of different tactics or activities, such as these think big sessions and so on, in order to sort of nudge you towards where you want to get to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the role of the designer, or at least my role in this whole process, was really to shadow product, right? What is my PM doing? What are the market opportunities? What are the interesting problems that she thinks that we should focus on based on the level of confidence that she has, with the validation, with the problem validation phase, etc. So it's really just absorbing that information and figuring out, okay, what's the next step for design? But I feel like, it's easier said than done. We know that. And in the end, it's really about figuring out what works best for you and your team. Some teams are going to have a harder time, talking about collaboration or strategy. Others are just going to, roll out with with issues or with proposals for delivery. But it's a constant challenge. And I think that's, at least to me, that's why it's so interesting to work at GitLab, because it's never a dull moment. There will always be a challenge. So yeah, you translated perfectly.
Perfect. So like for me previously, I've found that the term UX strategy can sometimes seem pretty scary. Like, yeah, often it can be used in quite abstract ways, and you don't really know what it means. But I feel like one thing a lot of junior designers could benefit from is understanding that the effort that you put in is not equal to the outcomes that you get out of it. So by deploying a UX strategy, it helps you to focus your effort into areas that give you asymmetric results or outcomes. So if I look and invest area in like a really high value area, that gives me more outcomes than if I just invest in like a little widget that doesn't really move the needle on business outcomes or anything like that. So I think you've got a really interesting perspective on like what UX strategy means in GitLab. So what I want to do like for the rest of the session is maybe look at some tangible examples of how you do UX strategy and how that helps you to share a clearer product vision between you and your team. Because as you mentioned, when your team is strategic, you are strategic. So I think that's a great mindset to have. So yeah, tell me what can we do to be more strategic with our designs?
Yeah, I think to start, I would say that this is also related to the people aspect of how you function, how your team functions, and how what you understand of strategy. I think also in that one comment I talked about, if my team is just talking, or my PM or my counterparts are very tactical and they want to solve just the problem of today, then I'm going to spend most of my time selling design, right? So I think my experience, and then if I can share a tip, is to start with a conversation, about why is understanding or creating or just having a UX strategy or having a shared vision about what you're building, a shared understanding, maybe not even a shared vision, just understanding the problem, why that is so important, and then break it down into how do you understand that problem? What do you need to do, right? Create a clear plan, because indeed it's a very attractive way to say, very sexy way to say, yeah, UX strategy, but what is that on a day-to-day, right? So if I can think about some of the examples and things that, I was able to apply with my team, was really shadowing PM, right? Is the PM involved in, I don't know, a customer call? It doesn't have to be about, I don't know, opportunity canvas or a more formal research. Is my PM talking to someone? Cool, I want to be there, right? And most likely your PM is not going to ask, do you want to be in the call? Do you want to be involved? Is that interesting to you? But find ways to know what's going on and kind of cut some steps, in the process. Be the shadow, ask about questions that are not yet on the table, and just make yourself available. That's how I approach things, because I know that, especially that we are an all remote company. Well, most companies now are functioning this way, but there are some things and some information that gets lost. Right? And when you have the hands-on experience and the hands-on contact with that type of information, whereas that's a customer feedback or just a insight that your team had with in a random conversation, it takes time for us to catch up in that conversation. So I'll definitely say be involved and try to understand the bigger picture. So participating on those calls, or even if you cannot because time zones, but draft a plan for the interview together. Just read the answers or the questions that the PM is thinking about posing. That helps. And let me see my draft here on other things. And
so just to pause there, participating in customer calls is great. And sometimes time zones don't sync up, but the activity and the process of planning and also debriefing based off the back of customer interviews, I found was really useful for finding alignment with the PM. So even if you can't necessarily participate synchronously, you can still watch the video and then in some way debrief with the PM. And that activity of communicating with your PM I found really valuable.
Exactly. And I think it's going back to rituals, right? If you know that that's a standing topic, if you know that's part of your criteria, like your success criteria as a designer, make that a standing conversation. Don't wait for someone to kind of bring that to the table. So one thing that Jackie and I did, pretty much every month, or whenever we had the ad hoc customer calls, is that in our weekly calls, what have we learned today? Right, our teams, our syncs with engineering also had that. This is what I learned today. This is what I learned from my customer. And we came into the conversation in the call thinking that, I don't know, people, whatever, random example, they want to configure their secrets using GitLab variables, but in the user interviews, they say, no, we want to have a complete different section in the product for that because blah, blah, blah. So just bring that one liner, that one insight, because that's the information that usually we share in comments, right? In the issues, those long threads. This is the information that you're gonna have to refer over and over and over to. So making that information available firsthand to people, it's really powerful. And also what I really appreciated is to be included in the direction changes. So we all have the direction pages, right? For product areas. And it's the PM's responsibility to update those pages, I think, monthly. So I know that a change in the direction page is gonna mean a change to my UX priorities. If the product direction is changing, the UX direction is changing. So keeping track of that asynchronously, or at least having to wait once a week to talk about that wasn't working for me. So I asked Jackie, every time you update something, ping me. I don't need it's not for my approval, it's just for my awareness so that I know how you're updating things or where and how that affects my design plan. So it's really about that shadowing, but also that exchange of information that you can translate as collaboration, but I think it's more like a partnership between everyone involved in building a future, building a product. So kind of goes that way in my head.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that and put that into my team meetings from now on as well. I think that's a really good thing. I think of team rituals are like basically shared habits that you have between your team that try and point you in a particular direction that you're trying to achieve. So what are some more like team rituals or team habits that you and your team have that help you to be more strategic, that help you to collaborate more effectively? I think that one example you shared was great.
Yeah, we have the Think Big sessions where anyone could just bring a problem and talk about that, and really let, for example, the developers inform the decisions. So I had a conversation with a couple of designers in the past where there's always a question like, how much should the developers or engineers, influence a feature? How opinionated should people be? I'm from the opinion that they should be opinionated. We are all experts, whether you like it or not. We all use this tool. We all use this platform. And we might not know best, because sometimes we are not exactly the persona, but I think it's so powerful that we all can bring some perspective to what we're building here. So for example, having these sessions or having these structure moments where we can say, I want to discuss this because I have all these ideas for how this feature should work. It's so powerful in the sense that we can work on a proposal together. I can work on some acceptance criteria or prototypes, or my PM can put some of these questions in the interview guide that my PM has prepared, and then validate that instead of just taking the developer's opinion into the source of truth, into what we're building. How can we constantly be questioning our own ideas or proposals and use that to validate what we want to build? So having that moment, that open moment for people to collaborate and share their input, to me, it's essential. And I think it also helps them, at least in my opinion, helps people understand the role of design in the development process, right? Is that we are here to bridge the gaps and to link product, engineering, interface, whatever, but we're here to understand everyone and kind of come up with, oh yeah, this is everything I heard. This is how I think we should solve the problem. So this is one of the actionable insights, if I can say it like that. And yeah, I know that teams are doing this differently. I think Sunjun, she does async design reviews. She has an issue where she poses a proposal and then the developers go into comments. In CI/CD, some of the girls are also trying to do the same. So I think it's so important to just have that one channel, to communicate ideas and validate them, people. Let's make sure that we have a good level of confidence about what we're building.
Super. So we got 1 minute left. So just one closing question or thought. Where do you think GitLab and GitLab design, our biggest opportunities around collaboration are?
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting question, but also a tough one. I think the challenge is it's really about finding the overlapping opportunities. I think we are all very great at what we do, but how can we, have a share items, for example, settings or navigation, things that are common to everyone, not just solve those problems, but create the platform where the designers can make room to collaborate to high level things. I think that's a challenge that I see, because we are all so busy and we all have these problems that exist and that affect everyone, and create that kind of that, I don't know, just an opportunities to solve these problems together. I think that's at least that's in CI/CD, that's a big thing. And I see that as a pattern across other teams. But we'll get there. I'm super confident on our teams and the individuals and everything we do. So let's see what happens next year. Let's see how we're going to be solving these problems.
Let's see. 2021 is going to be our year. All right. Hi, Anna. It was great speaking with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Nick.